On June 29, 2000, in room 1303 of an upscale hotel in Anshan City, Liaoning Province, China, 22-year-old Lian Lily was found dead with her clothes disheveled in a highly unusual manner. The young man who had been with her in that room was named Shang Erki, and he immediately became the prime suspect in the case. At first glance, this appeared to be a fairly straightforward case with plenty of witnesses and evidence. But no one could have predicted that it would trigger one of the most extraordinary judicial dramas in Chinese history. Over the next 6 years, forensic examination reports would be overturned and rewritten a staggering 6 times. The suspect was arrested and released and arrested again, caught in an endless cycle. So could the victim's family ever hope to see justice served? Shang Erki was born in 1977 into an upper-class family in Anshan. His father was a high-ranking official in the local public security system, wielding considerable influence within the government apparatus. His mother was a doctor at one of the city's major hospitals. The combination of political power and social status from both parents created a formidable protective shield around Erki from an early age. Growing up in such an environment, he became accustomed to being pampered and getting whatever he wanted, never having to face any real difficulties or challenges. This overly sheltered lifestyle gradually instilled in Erki an innate sense of superiority, as if he belonged to a different class than ordinary people. Arrogance and contempt for others became ingrained in his character. In Erki's view, everything seemed to revolve around him, because up to that point, there had never been anything he wanted that he couldn't obtain. And this life of never hearing the word no left him with no basic respect for rules or boundaries. When Erki graduated from high school, his academic performance was unremarkable, but that didn't matter. Through a quota reserved for children of government insiders, he easily gained admission to the police academy without having to compete fairly with other applicants. After graduating from college, things became even smoother when, thanks to his father's connections, he was assigned to work at an office under the Traffic Police Division of Anshan City. The job was leisurely and demanded neither real competence nor genuine effort. But for Erki, what mattered wasn't the work itself, but the uniform he got to wear. Donning that police uniform, a symbol of authority, only made Erki more smug and self-satisfied. To him, the uniform carried no meaning of responsibility or duty. Instead, it was like a glamorous costume that gave him even more freedom to do whatever he pleased, without anyone daring to challenge him. Erki was young, reasonably good-looking, came from a wealthy and powerful family, and was a police officer to boot. All these advantages combined made him a prominent and well-known figure among Anshan's young people. With his affluent background, Erki spent money lavishly without hesitation. For the convenience of his partying and pleasure-seeking lifestyle, he even rented a room on a long-term basis at the Tianyuan Hotel, considered the most upscale establishment in the area at that time. In Erki's worldview, women and money, like power itself, were merely tools to satisfy his own desires. Anyone or anything he set his sights on, he absolutely had to possess at any cost. He had never once accepted being turned down or giving up. But the young woman Lian Lily seemed to inhabit an entirely different world. In 1978, Lily was born into a government official's family with strict discipline and traditional values. Her father worked at the Anshan City Discipline Inspection Commission and was known for his integrity and honesty. Her mother, Wang Shu, was an employee at a state-owned enterprise, gentle and kind-hearted by nature. As the youngest daughter in the family, Lily had been showered with love by her parents and older brother since childhood. She was blessed with natural beauty, a tall figure, and a pure and cheerful personality. Lily was the kind of girl who drew attention even in a crowd, radiating an effortless charm. Having grown up in such a well-disciplined household, she received a proper upbringing that taught her etiquette and courtesy, always treating everyone around her with sincerity and kindness. In 1997, after graduating from high school, Lily's grades fell somewhat short of university admission requirements, so she didn't pursue higher education. Instead, she found work as an accounting clerk at a local organization in Anshan. At that time, universities hadn't yet expanded their enrollment as they would later, so many young people chose to enter the workforce immediately after graduating from high school. Lily's job was stable, and her life proceeded peacefully in an orderly routine day after day. In her early 20s and full of vitality, she harbored many beautiful dreams about the future ahead. In the eyes of colleagues and friends, Lily was a kind-hearted girl who took her work seriously. Although her personal qualities were quite good and she had no shortage of suitors, Lily was always cautious and reserved when it came to romance, never easily opening her heart or rushing into a relationship with anyone. In the summer of 2000, Lily had a high school reunion to attend, and she went along with her close friend just for the fun of it. This particular gathering was a bit special. It was a large reunion combining several classes from the same graduating year, so the turnout was quite substantial. At the party that day, there was a young man dressed sharply with slicked back hair and a rosy complexion who kept trying to approach Lily and strike up conversation. That man was Erki. Actually, back in their school days, Lily had already heard about this guy from the neighboring class. He was the typical privileged rich kid, smooth-talking, spending his days fooling around rather than studying or doing anything productive. As for Erki, this was the first time he really took notice of Lily. Girls change a lot as they grow up, and he discovered that the shy, unremarkable girl from their school days had blossomed into a stunning beauty. Without any makeup, her features were still refined and elegant, her demeanor gentle and graceful. Erki's desire-filled heart was immediately stirred. Following his familiar instinct to conquer, he launched an aggressive pursuit of Lily that very day. He deployed his connections and money, applying the same tactics that had helped him win over many other girls before, trying every possible way to claim this one. But Lily was completely different from the girls Erki had encountered before. She showed no interest whatsoever in his flashy showing off or the expensive gifts he offered. In fact, she found his approach off-putting. Out of politeness and not wanting to cause a scene, Lily didn't confront him directly, but she always tried to maintain her distance and clearly rejected Erki's advances. But Erki wasn't the type to give up easily. In the dictionary of his life, the phrase "can't have it" simply didn't exist. Lily's rejection not only failed to discourage him, but actually intensified his desire to conquer her more than ever. He told his friends that Lily was just playing hard to get, toying with him like a cat with a mouse, and boasted that they should just wait and see how he would win her over. After that, Erki began harassing Lily with increasing intensity. He called and texted constantly, even using his connections to track her whereabouts and monitor her schedule. This persistent, obsessive pursuit made Lily extremely uncomfortable and distressed, and she even began to feel afraid. She confided in and complained to her close friend Chen Dainuo about the situation. After hearing everything, Dainuo advised her that Erki came from a complicated family background and was known for being a player. It was best to stay far away from him. Lily strongly agreed with this advice. She was determined to make a clean break with Erki and have him completely disappear from her life. In her naive thinking, Lily believed that if she just had one direct and honest conversation with him, everything would be settled and return to normal. But she couldn't have known that this very decision would lead her step by step into the deadly trap that her pursuer had quietly laid out. The evening of June 29th, 2000, was the last day of Lily's life. That day, she had already made plans with her close friend Dainuo and some other friends to have dinner first, then head together to the trendiest nightclub of that time to dance and have fun. At the dinner table, everyone chatted animatedly and laughed together, the atmosphere warm and relaxed. Just then, Lily's phone suddenly rang. She looked down at the screen and saw the name that made her uncomfortable. Erki. As soon as she answered, Erki spoke in an urgent tone that brooked no refusal, saying he had something extremely pressing to discuss and demanded that Lily come immediately to room 1303 at the hotel where he had a long-term rental. Instinctively, Lily wanted to refuse on the spot, but on the phone, Erki sounded desperately earnest, even bringing up how he had once done a small favor for one of Lily's classmates, as a reminder of the debt she owed him. He swore and promised that this would be the very last time he would contact her, and after this meeting, he would absolutely never bother her again. Hearing the promise of the last time, Lily began to waver. With the mindset of wanting to quickly and thoroughly resolve this nuisance once and for all, she figured that if she went today to meet him face to face and clearly reject him, she could have peace of mind forever after. So she excused herself to her friends, saying she had something to take care of and would be right back, an hour at most, and then she'd meet them at the nightclub. Her friends were a bit worried, but seeing Lily's determined and confident attitude, they didn't try to talk her out of it. Around 8 p.m., Lily walked into the Tianyuan Hotel alone, heading up to the 13th floor toward room 1303. In her mind, she simply thought this would be a brief conversation to put an end to the persistent harassment once and for all, after which she would return to her friends and continue her fun evening. But Lily had no idea that waiting for her behind that door was someone whose reason had been completely overtaken by desire. A little after 9 p.m., when Dainuo noticed her friend had been gone for quite a while without returning, she began to feel a bit worried. She took out her phone and called Lily to check on the situation and see when she might be back. On the other end of the line, Lily's voice still sounded fairly normal. She said she was still talking with Erki and asked her friend to wait a little longer. About 20 minutes later, Dainuo and the group had made their way to the front of the nightclub as originally planned, and they called again to urge Lily to come. This time, Lily's answer was still just, "Wait a bit more." Everyone was getting a little impatient, but didn't think too much of it. At 10:25 p.m., Dainuo decided to call one more time, and this time, she clearly sensed that something was very wrong. On the other end, Lily's voice had completely changed from before. Her speech had become slurred and unclear, as if she were in some kind of half-conscious state. Lily seemed to be struggling to speak, her words halting and fragmented. She told Dainuo to wait for her at the nightclub entrance in 20 minutes. She would be there. By now, Dainuo's heart was filled with intense worry. She began to wonder whether Lily had been forced to drink or whether something had happened to her. Sure enough, just as she feared, the promised 20 minutes passed and Lily was nowhere to be seen. Anxiously, Dainuo called her friend's phone again, but this time all she got was the cold, mechanical message indicating the phone had been turned off. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over Dainuo. Without wasting another second, she immediately had her classmates track down Erki's phone number and frantically dialed it. The moment the call connected, Erki's voice came through, panicked and stammering. "I think something's wrong with her. Get over here now." Those words hit like a bolt of lightning out of a clear sky. Before anyone could process what was happening, the whole group dropped everything, rushed out of the nightclub and grabbed a taxi speeding toward the Tianyuan Hotel, their minds racing with fear and confusion. The group of friends rushed up to the 13th floor and stood in front of room 1303, pounding on the door repeatedly. They knocked and knocked, but it was a long time before Erki finally opened the door. "Where's Lily?" Dainuo burst in and demanded immediately. Faced with her urgent question, Erki said nothing. He just silently jerked his chin toward the bedroom in a wordless gesture. When Dainuo and her friends hurried into the bedroom, the sight that met their eyes was something they would never be able to forget for the rest of their lives. Lily lay motionless on the bed, her clothes disheveled and exposed. Her face had turned a terrifying shade of purple, while her lips and fingernails had darkened to an ominous black. Her left eye was half open in a disturbing way, the whites streaked with red blood vessels. Her arms and upper body were covered with large and small purple bruises, like evidence of some terrible struggle or violence. In their state of utter shock and terror, someone managed to collect themselves enough to quickly dial 120 for an ambulance and 110 to report to the police. About 20 minutes after receiving the call, the emergency medical team and police arrived at the scene one after another. But it was far too late. After examination, the doctors confirmed that Lily had been dead for quite some time. Based on the degree of rigor mortis and the lividity marks that had appeared on her skin, they estimated the time of death to be around 10:30 p.m., just shortly after her last phone call with her close friend Dainuo. This meant that while Dainuo had been anxiously waiting for news from her friend, Lily had probably already left this world. Lily's parents received the devastating news, but it wasn't until 1:30 a.m. the following morning that they were able to reach the hospital. When her mother, Wang Shu, stepped into the morgue and saw with her own eyes the cold, tragic body of her beloved daughter, she felt as if the entire world was collapsing before her. The pain was too great to bear, and she fainted on the spot. During the crime scene investigation, police also collected two important pieces of evidence. First, examination results showed that Lily had engaged in sexual intercourse with someone before her death. Second, on the carpet right next to the nightstand, they found a hotel notepad paper with traces of sedative powder on it. All the evidence collected pointed unanimously to one person, Erki, the one who had been in the room with Lily on that fateful night. However, when confronted with police questioning, Erki displayed an attitude of brazen defiance that was hard to believe. He claimed ignorance of everything they asked, denying any involvement as if he were completely uninvolved in the matter. And what made people even more outraged was that on the very night of the incident, Erki wasn't even formally detained for investigation. Instead, his own father, a high-ranking official in the public security system, came and took him straight back to his own unit under the guise of disciplinary confinement. Only after the determined and persistent demands of Lily's family did police finally arrest Erki for investigation 2 days later. But the Lian family couldn't have imagined that a mere 6 days after that, police would release Erki as if nothing had happened. A sense of foreboding and anxiety began to engulf the entire Lian family, who suspected that something was very wrong behind the scenes. On July 19th, the Lian family received an official forensic examination report from the authorities. The conclusion left them in utter disbelief. Lily was determined to have died from acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis, a natural disease rather than homicide. This conclusion was something Lily's parents simply could not accept, no matter how hard they tried. Their daughter had always been healthy and had never had any history of serious illness. How could she suddenly die from such a rare, acute disease? Moreover, if it really was death from natural causes, why were there bruises and signs of assault all over her body? Determined to find the truth for their daughter, Mr. and Mrs. Lian tried to suppress the immense grief tormenting them and began conducting their own investigation. They went to libraries throughout the city, searching for and studying every medical resource about pancreatitis they could find. Beyond that, they took the forensic report everywhere, seeking meetings and opinions from leading experts and professors at major hospitals in the province and city. Notably, all the medical experts they consulted gave remarkably consistent answers. The doctors all confirmed that patients with acute pancreatitis experience extremely obvious and severe symptoms when the condition strikes, excruciating abdominal pain that's impossible to endure, accompanied by continuous vomiting. With that level of pain, a patient simply cannot hide it or suffer in silence. Furthermore, when examining the pathological samples provided by the forensic team, Lily's pancreatic tissue showed no obvious signs of inflammation or the necrotic lesions typical of pancreatitis, only some minor bleeding points. These findings were completely insufficient to support a conclusion that the cause of death was pancreatitis. Some experts even pointed out frankly that mechanical asphyxiation also causes internal organ hemorrhaging, and this is basic knowledge that any competent forensic examiner would know. Right at this point, Lily's mother, Wang Shu, accidentally discovered a fact that made her blood run cold and filled her with even greater outrage. She learned that a doctor working at the very hospital where Erki's mother was employed had secretly performed an autopsy on her daughter's body without the family's consent or notification. Even more horrifying, after this secret autopsy, some of Lily's internal organs had vanished without a trace. What made it even more infuriating was that the doctor who performed this examination had no forensic qualifications whatsoever and no legal authority to conduct such work. All of this clearly indicated that someone was using power and connections to cover up the truth, attempting to disguise a brutal rape and murder as a death from natural causes. Facing these dark truths, Lily's family could not swallow their outrage. They strongly demanded that authorities conduct another forensic examination to uncover the truth. But local police kept stalling, dragging things out without providing any satisfactory response. Only on August 29th, after numerous struggles and pressure, did the Ministry of Public Security finally send 2 forensic experts to review the case. At this point, the Lian family placed great hope in this second examination, believing that with intervention from higher authorities and experts from the central government, the truth would surely come to light. However, what awaited them was another devastating blow beyond belief. The 2 forensic examiners sent by the Ministry of Public Security, after reviewing the files and evidence, both concluded that the original examination report was completely correct with no errors. This second examination result nearly destroyed the grief-stricken mother Wang Shu completely. She understood better than anyone that once her daughter's body was cremated, all physical evidence would be lost to ashes forever, and her daughter's wrongful death would never have a chance to be vindicated. Refusing to let that happen, this desperate mother made a decision that shocked everyone. She spent her own money to buy a large freezer to preserve her daughter's body, determined to hold on to this final piece of evidence at any cost. During those painful days, Wang Shu personally used cotton and gauze to carefully fill her daughter's empty abdominal cavity. She gently stroked her daughter's cold face, just as she used to do when putting her to sleep each night. Tears streamed down the aging mother's face as she wept and whispered a solemn vow that she would definitely get justice for her child. While Wang Shu and her husband were running around day and night, knocking on doors at one government office after another seeking justice for their daughter, Erki was living freely outside the reach of the law as if nothing had happened. His life seemed completely unaffected by Lily's death. Relying on the fact that his family had used their power and money to smooth everything over, he continued his decadent and extravagant lifestyle just as before. In April 2001, less than a year after Lily was killed, Erki even had the audacity to throw an extremely lavish and elaborate wedding. When news of this wedding reached Wang Shu, it was like a sharp knife stabbing through her heart. Her daughter's body was still lying in a freezer waiting for justice, yet her killer was beating drums and gongs, joyfully welcoming his new bride home. By this point, Wang Shu clearly understood that the opposing family's influence was too vast, their network of relationships intricately woven throughout the local power structure. Trying to seek justice through normal channels seemed virtually impossible anymore. But she refused to surrender to fate. Ordinary people also have the right to fight and expose the truth. Over the following years, Wang Shu began poring over thick books on law and forensic medicine page by page. She learned to read and understand professional terminology, studied legal procedures, and researched every legal provision that might help her daughter's case. She persuaded her husband to sell all their family assets, using the money to hire lawyers and continuously file appeals with various levels of government agencies. The tireless persistence of this mother was finally rewarded when she received a crucial breakthrough. In June 2001, under growing pressure from public opinion and directives from higher authorities, the Anshan City Procuratorate was compelled to reopen the case for review. At the same time, to obtain the most authoritative examination results possible, the Procuratorate decided to send Lily's pathological tissue samples to the testing center under the Ministry of Justice in Shanghai for independent examination. Wang Shu understood that these samples were the key evidence, the only remaining hope to clear her daughter's name. After everything that had happened, she no longer trusted anyone. Cautious in every step, and to prevent anyone from switching the evidence midway, she personally bought plane tickets and carried the container holding tissue samples cut from her daughter's organs, flying to Shanghai with the forensic examiners. Not once, but 3 times she made this journey. In September, the test results from Shanghai were finally announced. The conclusion stated clearly, Lily's cause of death was not pancreatitis. This result completely overturned the 2 previous examinations conducted by local public security, proving that those reports had been false. Holding this new report in her hands, Wang Shu wept uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face. She believed she had taken another big step closer to the truth and justice. But she didn't realize that the difficulty and complexity of this case far exceeded anything she and her family could have imagined. Despite now having in hand this authoritative examination report from the Ministry of Justice, Anshan police stubbornly refused to acknowledge it. They argued that the report only ruled out pancreatitis as the cause of death, but could not determine the specific cause of death, and therefore refused to classify the case as a homicide. Naturally, they also refused to arrest Erki for investigation. In anger and frustration, Lily's family continued to demand that authorities conduct yet another examination. But they couldn't have expected that this next examination would be even more baffling and disappointing than all the previous ones. This time, forensic examiners from the Supreme People's Procuratorate were invited to conduct the examination. With the highest authority in the judicial system, everyone assumed this result would be the final, fair verdict. But the conclusion that was delivered left the victim's family feeling like they'd been struck by lightning. The forensic team concluded that Lily died from alcohol consumption combined with sedatives causing pancreatic hemorrhage, and that this constituted natural death rather than homicide. In an instant, the sky seemed to collapse before the Lian family. Hope had been kindled, then shattered, time after time. Each time they thought they were about to grasp justice, they were pushed back to the starting line. The legal battle seesawing around autopsy reports seemed endless, dragging on in hopelessness. It wasn't until March 5, 2003, nearly 3 years after Lily's death, that the case finally received its most critical and decisive turning point. Thanks to tireless advocacy efforts from multiple parties, a professional forensic conference on the case was convened in Shenyang City, Liaoning Province. Attending this conference were 7 of the nation's top forensic medicine experts, considered masters in the field of forensic examination. After meticulously and thoroughly studying all pathological samples, case files, and all previous examination results, the 7 experts reached a unanimous conclusion that was completely overturning. Lily could not possibly have died from acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis as previous examinations had concluded. Instead, the most likely cause was death by mechanical asphyxiation, meaning she had been strangled or smothered to death. The experts also confirmed that this case needed to be classified as a criminal case and investigated as a homicide. This was already the 5th examination, and the conclusion from these 7 leading experts completely demolished all the lies and cover-ups that had come before. Anshan police had no choice but to arrest Erki once again for criminal investigation. Yet things still didn't stop there. Due to the lack of direct evidence proving the act of murder, the local procuratorate twice in succession cited insufficient evidence as grounds to refuse approval for the suspect's arrest. During that period, Wang Shu was once invited to police headquarters to meet and discuss her daughter's case with the bureau chief. At that meeting, the chief directly asked her whether the case could be settled through accepting a large compensation payment. Wang Shu firmly refused and expressed her iron determination to investigate until the truth was fully revealed. In early 2004, Wang Shu once again packed up all the materials and evidence she had collected over the years and set off alone for Beijing. The persistence and tireless efforts of this aging mother were finally rewarded when she succeeded in attracting the attention of the highest levels of leadership. On April 8, 2004, 5 experts from the Ministry of Public Security, after reviewing the entire case file, unanimously concluded that this case still had too many unanswered questions and needed to be formally reopened for serious investigation from the beginning. 6 months later, police arrested Erki for the 3rd time. But this time there was an important difference. To completely cut off all communication between Erki and the outside world, as well as the protective umbrella of power behind him, the suspect was transferred directly to Panjin City to be detained at a location far from Anshan. Away from Anshan, the territory where his family's network of connections could shelter and protect him, Erki's magic finally lost its power. The special task force established to investigate this case had early on recognized that trying to pry the truth directly from Erki's mouth would be like trying to climb to heaven. He was a stubborn character, well protected and well coached, and wouldn't easily confess to anything that could hurt him. Therefore, they decided to adjust their case-breaking strategy. Instead of focusing on the main suspect, they would first seek breakthroughs from the people around him. The police's first target was Lily's close friend Dainuo, who had moved away to Hainan long ago. When police showed up in front of her, Dainuo's psychological defenses collapsed immediately. Under repeated persuasion and intense psychological pressure from the task force, she broke down crying and confessed to giving false testimony years earlier. It turned out that the day after the incident, Erki had sought her out and used both monetary inducements and death threats to force her to follow a pre-scripted story, lying to police that Lily and Erki had been in a romantic relationship for years and that the sexual encounter had been consensual. Out of fear, Daenuo had betrayed both her friend and her own conscience. She said that for all those years, she had been living in deep self-blame and terror. Shortly after, the task force continued working with Jing Ting, a close friend of Erki. Faced with increasingly clear evidence, Jing Ting provided crucial information. Erki had previously shown an obsessive and persistent interest in Lily. On the night of the incident, Erki had actually come to Jing Ting, asking how to handle the situation with Lily. Instead of trying to stop him, Jing Ting had suggested drugging the victim. These two independent testimonies completely demolished Erki's previous claims about his relationship with the victim and assertions that everything had been consensual. Almost simultaneously, the results of the sixth and final forensic examination were released. The report confirmed that the victim's lungs showed serious damage. The cause of death was asphyxiation from external force, and the case was determined to involve serious criminal conduct. At this point, the entire chain of evidence in the case had formed a tight, closed loop. When investigators laid before Erki one by one, Daenuo's testimony, Jing Ting's statement, and the forensic report, his previously defiant attitude finally crumbled. Realizing there was no way out, his psychological defenses completely collapsed, and Erki confessed to everything he had done on that fateful night 5 years earlier. As it turned out, around 8 p.m. on June 29, 2000, before calling Lily to lure her to the hotel, Erki had already prepared everything for his crime. First, he stopped to buy a bottle of fruit juice right in front of the hotel. Then he went back to his car and retrieved 5 or 6 sedative pills he had prepared in advance. He wrapped the pills in a piece of hotel notepad paper and carefully crushed them into a fine powder. The entire amount of powdered medication was then dumped into the juice bottle. Around 9 p.m., when the naive young woman Lily walked into room 1303 with the simple intention of having a frank conversation to end this persistent harassment, Erki greeted her with a pretense of friendliness and kindness. He graciously offered her the fruit juice. Lily, thinking simply and suspecting nothing, took the bottle and drank it all in one go. For the next half hour or so, Erki made small talk and acted casual to kill time, waiting for the drugs to take effect. Before long, Lily began feeling that something wasn't right. Her head felt heavy, her limbs went weak and limp, her whole body felt like it was about to collapse. Her consciousness also gradually became hazy. Seeing that the drugs had kicked in, Erki immediately made his move. He turned off Lily's phone to cut off all contact with the outside world. He carried the semi-conscious Lily onto the bed, preparing to commit his depraved act. However, right at that moment, the remnants of consciousness within Lily suddenly stirred awake. Realizing the danger she was in, she used every ounce of strength she had to resist and began screaming for help. The hotel's soundproofing wasn't very good, and her cries could easily carry into the hallway. Erki, in his frenzied, bestial state, feared that her screams would alert people in neighboring rooms and cause trouble for him. In his panic, he grabbed a pillow from the bed and pressed it down hard over Lily's face. Under the crushing weight of the pillow and those brutal hands, Lily struggled to fight back, but her body had grown too weak from the effects of the drugs. Her resistance grew weaker and weaker, until finally she fell completely silent and still. After satisfying his depraved urges, Erki stood up and lifted the pillow away. Only then did he realize in horror that Lily was completely motionless, without the faintest breath left in her body. The heinous crime occurred in 2000, but it wasn't until May 15th, 2006, 6 years later, that Erki was finally brought to trial. After 9 months of prolonged proceedings with many tense courtroom sessions, the Anshan City Intermediate People's Court finally handed down its verdict. Erki was sentenced to life imprisonment with deprivation of political rights for life. However, Lily's family was still not entirely satisfied with this sentence. They argued that Erki's actions constituted intentional homicide after his attempted assault failed, making the nature of his crime extremely serious and brutal. He should have been sentenced to death to match the crime he committed. Therefore, they continued to file appeals to the Anshan City People's Procuratorate requesting a heavier punishment. But 1 year later, the Liaoning Provincial High Court rejected the family's appeal and upheld the life sentence. And so, this extraordinary and tragic case that had dragged on for 6 long years through countless hardships, with 6 forensic examinations continuously overturned and rewritten, and the suspect arrested and released 3 times, finally came to an official legal conclusion. And that is the case for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.